buy one of the SME or the corporate memberships and get that bundled thing, and then get access to events like this for free and the training workshops. ACMA is what's called a company limited by guarantee, which means it's a not-for-profit. It can never be sold, it can never actually make any money or anything like that. So any money that goes into ACMA goes straight back to the members in terms of putting on events like this, newsletters, creating content, website content, and so forth. I think, so I've got to thank Black Marketing for sponsoring the venue tonight, and the food and drink, and introducing the panel. So we have Tiffany and Michelle, who are Tiff with me, and I'll let them talk a little bit about themselves in a second, but they're very, very popular YouTubers, influencers. We have Philip Kitcher, who's from Style Hall, so that's an influencer agency, and Rashmi and Nan from Autodesk, sorry, just mental blank there for a second. She's worked with a lot of influencers over her time, and she also brings a B2B viewpoint to this, which I think is quite interesting, because most people think of influencers as a B2C type thing, but actually it can be just as much B2B, so I'm looking forward to hearing what you've got to say as well. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Chris, who's going to be your main host and questioner tonight. I'll be helping out, and Rio's also got a microphone. The idea about this is not about the panel talking to the audience. It's supposed to be a question and answer session. So they haven't prepared anything. Your questions to them about what it's like being an influencer, how it works, what doesn't work about it, are very important. So please put your hands up and ask your questions. That's the whole point of the night. We'll be going for about an hour, and then afterwards we usually will have some drinks for about another 3/4 of an hour. And then sometimes people actually go on to other bars, and then other bars. Not that I would have done that. So with that, I hand over to Chris. So
I think Simon sponsors that part. But thank you very much for coming along. Thank you for sharing your time with us. I know it's very important, so you will get a lot out of this. Please ask questions along the way. Like I say, we have people in the audience with microphones. We have Rio at the back and Olivia over there. So do ask questions. But I thought it'd be a great way to kick off, and actually for the panelists to introduce themselves and talk a bit about their business. Let's start with me.
Hi, I'm Tiffany. I'm G, and we are actually siblings, like blood-related sisters. And we have a YouTube channel called Tiff with Me. We post videos regularly, like every single week. Yeah, once a week. Yeah, that's about it. Okay.
Pretty good. I have to be careful I don't want to make it too long-winded, because my wife always says that really ages you. So I won't go through the whole kind of thing of what I've been doing over the last 200 years or anything like that. But what I will say is that I've been fortunate enough to work in social media and digital marketing now for the last 10 years, having come from pretty much a creative content base with some pretty big media players like Discovery Networks, National Geographic, Group M agency, but I found myself in a business which my 13-year-old daughter probably knows a lot more about, which is how you work with creators, or digital-first creators, as I like to call them, individuals who have a following, an audience built around their storytelling and their identity, and how that can help brands communicate with audiences that they can't connect with in more traditional ways on TV and print, etc. So I've been working specifically with Style Hall over the last 4 years from an agency perspective. We started off as a multi-channel network, as they used to be called, and we've evolved into being a creative tech agency where we deliver everything from start to finish, which is insights and intel, analysis of trends, selection of influencers, the right kind of influencers, that the audience of the influencer matches and aligns with the brand's target audience, delivery of all the content, whether it's on a social media platform like Instagram or YouTube, stacks of measurements and quantifying the return on investment. So pretty much 360 project end-to-end management is where an agency like Style Hall comes into this. Managing the headaches that can come with managing talent, and talent is can of worms, and I'm not saying this specifically with you two in mind, but if you think about Hollywood and Bollywood and TV and how long that's been around, how many scandals and how many stories have there been wrapped around celebrities. I think, and we'll talk about this, the business of influence is still very nascent. Facebook and YouTube have only been around for 15 years. Influencer content marketing for probably 5 to 8 years. So we're at a point now, and it's an interesting tipping point, and I see a real positive aspect to this. We're questioning some of the tech giants. We're looking at accountability. We're looking at how we quantify the investment we put into this. We're looking at fraud. We're looking at authentication. But at the end of the day, the trend is, and the reports are, that influencer content marketing is more and more valid and more an accurate and targeted way of reaching an audience you can't do without. And it's not the only form of marketing channel, but it can be, if it's done right, a very effective integrated planning tool.
And Rashmi's got lots of experience of doing this from a B2B perspective, so Rashmi, maybe introduce yourself and maybe give a bit of background about where you used to work as well as where you work now at Autodesk.
Yeah, sure. So my current job at Autodesk is I'm managing digital marketing, and when I say digital marketing, pretty much majority of our spends usually go on paid search, display, and all of that, and influencer marketing doesn't even come into picture for that matter. So that is the reason, one of the reason I'm here is like, we don't still believe in influencer. So my background has been in digital media, like, pretty much I started my career when digital was getting introduced in Singapore. So I've been around in Singapore for the last 10 years. I started my career with working on MasterCard, Google, then moved on, work on a few other agencies. Then my stint at Mediacom was the longest, when 6 years I spent on Dell and Apple, managing their digital marketing, regional digital marketing, and also global efforts for search for Dell. Pretty much very strong e-commerce, digital, and anything to do with, managing brand on the online platform. So it was still kind of, I have seen the growth on where the digital spends on Dell was versus 6 years later where it went. And then after that I moved on to Omnicom, where I started working on Intel, and Intel spends like quite a lot of money on social media. So it's about like, so I had like the opportunity to spend almost 60% of their total marketing budget on just social. That is LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook. And that's when you start spending a lot of money on social on a particular platform, you start getting attention. You start getting attention from the publishers, which means they start opening up their Pandora box on what can be done, what cannot be done, and stuff like that. So got a lot of learning from there, and then moved on to Autodesk, which is an internal client-side role, my first role. And of course, it's very, very different world compared to the advertising world. Like, when we are on the advertising side, we feel that, oh, client-side role is like cushy, very nice, fantastic, big paycheck and stuff like that. But to be honest, being a digital marketer, there are lots of challenges that's there on the client side. So we can talk a little bit more on that, or probably after the session. But yes.
So if we start with, Tiffany and Michelle, maybe you can give me a background about why you became influencers, and at what point you were able to then start charging for you to basically say, yes, you will do something, but it will cost you to actually do that. What was the tipping point? What was the amount of followers you had and the influence you had where you were actually able to say, I will now start charging for this? And give us a bit of background about kind of that process and how you then started work with the MediaCore as well.
Okay, so in the beginning, we didn't really thought of doing YouTube as a full-time thing. We just started posting because we wanted to share with our audiences, our lives and what we like. Mainly, we posted shopping hauls, shopping videos, and then slowly Actually, we have been doing this for about 3 years. For the past 2 years, we didn't really post consistently. So it was only until the past 1 year that we started doing this for full time, as a full-time job. And sorry, what was the question?
So at what point did you feel like you could start charging to become an influencer?
Okay. Okay, so it's actually mainly a demand and supply thing. Initially, we were willing to do we were willing to promote brands for even no charges when we were really small. And then eventually we noticed that brands were starting to, like, they were willing to pay us. I think it started when we hit about 100K followers, subscribers. Yeah, so in the past year we actually grew from 20K to 320K right now.
What do you put that growth down to?
Sorry?
What do you put that growth down to? Why did you grow so fast?
Why did it grow so fast? It was mainly because we had a couple of viral videos and people started to take note of us. Yeah, it was a very gradual thing actually. I can't really put a finger to it as to like why we grew so fast, but we did have a couple of really viral videos. Yeah.
What was that? Do you have ongoing clients? You were talking to me before, for example, about having category exclusive clients, for example. Maybe you get a bit of background about which clients you prefer to work with and how you work with clients.
Okay. She's really shy. She always does this to me. Okay. Okay, yeah. So in general, we only work with clients that we truly believe in. Like, if we believe in their brand, then we will go ahead with working with them. Actually, I think there are many different aspects. For instance, there was this client that who wanted to work with us, and we really wanted to work with them as well, but they maybe their branding is like, how do I put it? They do some hard selling, and that doesn't like go well with our brand, so we actually rejected them. So we do pick what kind of we do pick the clients that we want to work with. Yeah.
So you are very much authentic. You won't push a product that you don't actually believe in yourselves.
Yes.
Which is
because
absolutely
it's important to believe in the product before you promote them and share them with our viewers. Because our viewers are like our friends, so we want to share something that we truly would believe in and would use.
Thank you. And from Philip, from your perspective, you must have had examples of influencers who would just take the money and do anything.
Yeah, but that's a short-term game, and I think, you know, to hear the ladies here talk about being selective about the brands that you want to partner with and how it fits with your brand personality and you stand for and your values is really critical, and it's where you get the best results. As an agency that really drives clients to consider an always-on content calendar approach, I mean by that I mean not just a one-off singular campaign approach, something in January, then not again till September, different influencers here and there, kind of picked almost randomly. The results on that are not going to be nearly as good as if you invest in really identifying the right type of creators that match with the target audience of the brand and getting the fit, the type of creative that you have, your personality, the way that you create your videos and the way you tell your stories. It works for some brands, and for some brands it wouldn't. There was a great example in Singapore, and they're probably tired of being used in conferences, in sessions like this. The Ministry of Finance here in Singapore last year reached out to 50 influencers in the lifestyle, fashion, beauty space. Nothing wrong with raising awareness and trying to connect with a younger audience and tell them how that they should be more budget savvy and how they should understand the systems of budgeting here in Singapore with the budget, the national budget coming up. But they didn't brief the influencers correctly, so that there was some kind of really awkward postings that were connected with the campaign. They didn't select influencers who were really knowledgeable, not their fault, but they weren't really knowledgeable or interested in money or budgets. Some basics that were omitted, and that's why we constantly use that as a case study and say, here's an example of what not to do. Unfortunately, Ministry of Finance. Anyone here from that? I hope not.
So public policy and influencers don't go together?
I'm not sure. You know what? There's absolutely. I believe that creators, influencers can be used to communicate messages, whatever the category. Style Hall is a leader in female lifestyle, and that's beauty and fashion. But more and more of our business has been wrapped around hotel, hospitality, travel, tourism, automobiles, telcos. I mean, essentially you are connecting with, a brand is connecting with a creator and connecting them with meaningful ways so that they can connect with their following that they can't connect in traditional platforms. So in terms of examples of influencers who were selected wrongly, there are plenty of those. But when it's done correctly, when you've really selected with the right criteria, and there's a number of ways of doing it, and I believe very much it's human touch and number crunching, or human touch and data, and it's getting the sweet spot. You can't just have an automated way of picking influencers, and here on my dashboard is 1 million influencers with these views and impressions and these vanity metrics, and think that's the way to use and integrate influencers into content campaigns. Not. You can have some aspect of algorithms and automation to select, but ultimately it's about working with talent and working with people like yourselves to get you to understand what the brand wants, so that the brand has a relationship with you, you have a relationship with the brand, and that's where you get the strongest results.
And Rashmi, give us your experience of working with influencers, both the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah, sure. I think definitely, let's start with the numbers. So if we see the globally ad spending today right now sitting at about 400 billion, and then out of that about 88 to 90 billion is digital ad spending. And out of that, probably just 7 billion is influencer marketing, like some of the numbers. And if you look at the rate of growth of influencer marketing is about 6 to 7%. And compared to the amount of noise that's out there in the marketing world, that is the next big thing, I personally feel that there are some barriers in order to achieve the growth that is expected right now. The first barrier is, I would say, just from the campaign objective itself, as a marketer. So when I was working on Dell, and Dell was gradually moving into B2B space, they had no experience, no background in B2B. The first thing that they decided to do is develop a thought leadership through influencers. So who were their influencers? They were like some partners, those who were already, Dell was already working. They started with that, and then they hired some more influencers as well. So they entered in the business with the help of influencers. It worked for them. But at the same time, when we have like those marketing dollars where it's very thin budget and we have to drive like certain objective, it becomes very difficult to invest in influencer. Also, influencer is about reach and awareness more than the action. So I was just talking to Chris that, while I was going through some of, like the content on the topic, I couldn't find any of the single case study where a client has used influencer marketing and it has a direct correlation with what they have achieved on how it has influenced. So I feel that when it comes to the reach, yes. When it comes to quick, getting attention, maybe yes. But from the long-term perspective, the amount of money that we pay, what are the returns from there? Coming from the B2B perspective, the audience that we target, right? Like I have been working on tech all this while. The audience that we target are highly aware. Like they are the ones they reach out for what is the latest in the market, what's going on. So they follow all the tech brands, all the latest tech websites and everything. So we don't need an influencer to tell why they have to trust our brand. Like for example, a brand like Autodesk, like whenever we create an event, people pay to come to our events to know what's happening, what's new at Autodesk, because we are the leading design software company. So for us, there was a point when we were thinking that just now we just completed business transformation, and when we were undergoing through this digital business transformation, we found out that there was a bit of negativity out there online, and we were thinking that why not use influencers to kind of subside some of these negativity and let people talk more positive, some of our key partners. And then there were a lot of discussion that happened, and then we found out that the cost of not doing it right is much more than the advantages of doing it. So then we realized, because Autodesk is like 35-year-old, company, and it is very, very high cost if you start associating with an influencer that doesn't work out. Also, people are like, our target audience is highly aware of what the software can do, what it cannot do. And they're very quick. At the time of buying, they do comparisons and what's working, what's not, we don't have any closest competitors. So, people can come and talk negative, start talking, and once they start talking negative online, it is very difficult to control. So I think those are some of the key issues which I feel that the other marketers probably will also be thinking, while investing in influencing.
Thank you. Right, ask the questions. Olivia.
I was just thinking, I really like that there's like a B2B and a B2C approach. Do you think that there should be two distinct approaches when it comes to influencer marketing when targeting these separate audience segments from your perspective in the panel?
I just have to say one thing, that B2C guys have a lot more deeper pockets for brand awareness. B2B guys don't. We really work on a very thin marketing spend, and we have like a very dedicated sort of an objective that we're trying to get. Unless there is a strong reason on why we want to use influencer and there is a clear objective, I don't think that any of the tech or the B2B guys would even want to go there, because it's what all you hear from B2B is like, it's all about leads. What is CPL? So that's what I feel. Wherein on the B2C side, we see a lot more influencers because, first of all, it's like, the consumers who like to follow, who are actually following. There are a lot of followers, and also, they're happy to do the testing the brands and everything. It is the low cost. The price of the product also matters. Like, for example, nobody is gonna go and buy our software, which is like $3,000, compared to, buying shoes, which is like, maybe $200, $300. So that also adds.
It depends which shoes you buy.
Other questions around it? Yes, we have.
So I wanted to get your thoughts on the level of understanding or the level of sophistication, not so much from the creator side or the agency side, but more from the client side. So one of the impressions I have as an outsider looking into the industry is that very often the motivation, the campaign objective that clients have is as simple as influencer marketing is a cheap way of getting reach. But content actually has a variety of different, campaign objectives. You have content that deepens relationships with existing clients. You have, content that's about educating probably a new sector. Beyond just building brand awareness in a kind of cheap way, right? So I'm really curious to know, like for the ladies, like for example, when clients approach you, are they very clear about the objectives, or is it much more sophisticated or much more complicated than just, we want to see our brand in your video as often as possible? And for the agency side, are there any other conversations beyond that kind of, lead to more ongoing relationships with, a small amount of content creators and less of that kind of shotgun approach that you mentioned with Ministry of Finance?
Most of the time, the clients that we work with, they are very clear on what's the main goal that they have. So yeah, yeah, they do. Yes,
Is it always about selling product? I mean, do they measure the success of their sponsorship that way?
I guess it depends on the brand. Some brands, they want us to create more of awareness of their own brand, and some brands, they want us to help them to promote more on their item or their products. Yeah, they usually they do have different objectives. Yeah, but they are always very clear on what they want and the message and the brief. Yeah, so.
Just add to that, I mean, I think certainly our experience working with brands and partners who they fall into two buckets. Generally, they've never worked with an influencer before, never worked with a creator before, but they're excited, they're interested, at least I should say. Perhaps they've been to a session like this and they feel, you know what, I should put some of my budget into this, but I don't understand it. And then there are the other clients that we meet where they're really kind of, there's pushback because their experience has not generally been that successful. I'm talking about new clients here. And then of course there's the third one, which is the evangelist. That's the person from a sales point of view, from an agency point of view. We want to kind of latch into someone who really believes in the power and understands it, and understands how you can connect with audiences and consumers through influence content marketing. But I think it's an interesting one where a client is nervous, and I almost want to dissuade them from working with influencers, you know, depending on what the brief is. Because it's not right for every brand and for every partner to work with influencers. Some are incredibly micromanaging in terms of how and what they want or would want a creator to post. The kind of content that they are comfortable with may not fit with what a creator is used to posting in terms of how they speak to their audience, and that's where there can be a disconnect. So it's much better to dissuade a client, a brand, from working with an influencer and choose another form of communication, albeit maybe a traditional way that they're already comfortable with. And influencer content marketing is not the only way of reaching consumers. I would never advocate this is the only way, this is the only place you should place your budget. What I will say is that you should consider it as part of a fully integrated content marketing campaign, or a fully integrated advertising campaign, which can have many forms, out of home, experiential, etc., etc. So it's not the only way, and I think it's really important to try and get, you know, again, a sense of trust, a sense of understanding with a client for the first time as an agency, to really understand what they want to do, to really understand what the brief is, their objectives, help them write the brief often, and then decide whether or not it's the right time or the right place to work with an influencer. And I absolutely would recommend test and learn. Work on something small to begin with. You know, it's better to at least test the waters working with an agency like ourselves, working with an influencer for the first time, understanding how you begin to choose certain topics which, you know, consumers are interested in, the type of influencers you could work in, not just someone that you went to university with or someone in the company knows. Going back to your question about cheapness, there are definitely, unfortunately, plenty of examples of people shortcutting the whole process or thinking they can get to audiences in a very quick, easy, cheap way, and the results generally are not very convincing. You have to invest time in this. These guys put a lot of effort into what they post, how they talk to their audience. Don't just treat them as a piece of something that is just a transactional piece of, you know, it's just a tool. These are individuals, these are talents.
Is anyone in the audience actually employing influencers to promote their brands? Yes. Can you give a bit of an example about what it was?
Okay.
Your experience of it?
Yeah. So currently, I'm working on a project for a bakery. So we are trying to get some influencers on board. Yeah, and I think that's when we have a discussion about what kind of influences would be suitable. You know, so is it food related? Yeah, you know, but because in this idea we need the influencer to be in the video itself. So which means that because usually food influencers don't appear in front of the camera, they're behind the scenes. They're just photographing the food. You know, so things like that. Yeah, so. Yeah, so it's more of
what's the criteria you're going through? How are you choosing your influencers? Are you going through an agency, or are you going to someone to MediaCore, or are you going direct to the influencers themselves?
Yeah, I think I'm quite lucky because I sort of moved my office into. I'm sharing space with an influencer, so like then through her I got to know more influencers. So growing my little network of influencers. Yeah.
Okay, next question. Rio.
Sorry, just to follow up on what Miguel was asking. I think, if I'm not wrong, how it evolves is that in the past you have a big brand that can afford, say, Roger Federer and pay them millions to be a spokesperson for the brand. And then after that, all of a sudden you have all these YouTubers and so on with a following. And we decide to say, hey, how about we get a few of these guys and get that reach as well? You know, and therefore we started to see influencers getting a pie, you know, paying them a lot less rather, and then when you add them all together, you probably can get as much reach as a Roger Federer, for example. So my question would really be, that approach essentially treats these influencers as a spokesperson kind of a model. Whereas, like what was mentioned just now, they are actually creators. So there's a very big difference because Roger Federer don't create content. You know, so how do we move this forward so that the industry recognizes influencers as content creators and not just a pretty face? You know, and even for influencers like Live With Me, for example, there's a shelf life to the look. You know, that how do you extend your shelf life, so to speak?
It's an excellent question. Let's ask them. How do you intend to develop your personal brands and your brand on YouTube to keep your influence, but also to attract new audiences and to get to 500,000 to 1 million followers and have the access to more brands?
So it's about, you're asking how we are going to prolong our shelf.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Actually, I think we haven't. I think because basically our audiences, they see us as their friends. Yeah. So I think there's also a difference between celebrities and us. You see, they look at celebrities as though like they are someone out there, and they look at us as though we are their friends. So if you know, even when I post something like on Instagram with just a normal beverage, everyone will be asking me, "Oh, what beverage is that?" So I think that's the difference. So in terms of prolonging our shelf life, I would think that as we grow older together with this audience, they will grow older with us. So we can create different type of content that will speak to them as we grow older. So for me, I don't see that as a problem right now because most of the videos that we do are very lifestyle based. So as we grow older, definitely they will grow older as well. Yeah.
So you expect to carry the 100,000, 200,000, whatever it happens to be by, say, the end of the year, for example, with you to the next part of your life, and then change the brands as a result of that?
Yeah, that's right.
Do you have a lot of data about about your audience? I mean, are they the same age, same interests? Do you get that sort of information?
Sorry?
Do you have Do you have information coming to you from like YouTube, for instance,
okay.
about the demographics of your audience?
Yes, we do. Mostly our audiences are between 18 to 35. That's like probably 80%. So they are pretty much around our age. So, yeah, this.
A question at the back.
Shelf life is pretty much a male perspective, isn't it?
I mean, I was just going to say more and more creators who as I get older, have been working with, have also been getting older, and more of them become parents. And some of them don't want to continue in this business, and that's great. They go off and do something else, be a dentist, which is what their mum and dad always wanted them to be, or a lawyer, or just stay at home, mummy or daddy. But I think just the question that you asked about, an ambassador. There is, amongst millennials and amongst Gen Zs is an absolute kind of skepticism and a pushback at the sense of that traditional paid ambassador speaking the lines of a script from the brand team who gives them that script and they just spout it out. That's why they're so hard to connect with Gen Zs and millennials, because they very cynical and skeptical about the traditional forms of messaging. And that's why, to your point about being natural and relatable and like a friend, that's why there is this huge appeal. I mean, it's something like 7-8 times more appealing for Gen Zs than Hollywood stars, YouTubers, 7-8 times more appealing to Gen Zs.
I mean, it's a good point he raised, because is it different for men and for women? Do women have a longer shelf life, or do men have a longer shelf life? Are there more women influencers in your experience, or male influencers in your agency, for example?
There's not enough creators. There is definitely a shortage. There are not enough. There are always brands saying, "Can I have more creators? I still want that big reach, but I don't want to have heard of them before. I don't want to have a creator who's worked on a competitor brand." In Singapore, it's a real challenge coming up with influencers with the kind of reach that more often brand teams want.
So you're saying there isn't a shelf life? Tiff with me can go on forever.
I don't know if we know that. It hasn't been around long enough for us to know. Do we know if Facebook and YouTube will be around in 5-10 years? They're already talking about antitrust. Where's it going to go? Depends on who gets elected, doesn't it?
All those MySpace influencers out there out of a job already. Yes.
I say we don't know enough about it, but I think these are people's lives, and people are following their lives because they're interested in them, because they have a passion in some way or other. And I've seen in the very short time that I've been working this business, 5-8 years, that they still can have a following if they're interested in pursuing this as parents or as whatever they go on to want to talk and share about.
Okay, another question for the audience.
So my question is about product launches. Do you have any case studies that you've done for any product launches?
Lashmi.
Yeah, so one of the case study that I just mentioned was like, when Dell was trying to enter in the new business and the new market, like globally, they used influencers to sort of, establish a thought leadership, like trying to be seen as that, they have just come in and there's a lot of going on. So when it comes to, when it comes to product launches, the key KPI is awareness, right? So for awareness and pure reach, if you have deep pockets, then definitely I think influencer will have an impact on give you that reach and that awareness instantly.
Do you ask Tiff with me, have they been involved? Give an example. Maybe Tiff maybe can give an example of a product they launched on where you've helped launch it.
Okay. Actually, I don't really understand the question. I couldn't really hear you. Sorry.
Okay. My question is about product launches.
Okay.
So, is there any successful product launches where the client invested, say, $10,000 in your service? I don't know what you charge, but $10,000 and they got $100,000 return. Do you have any such case studies, and how was the reach and how was the return on investment?
Okay. In general, when it comes to product launches, for instance, recently we have been working with Sony. All they expect from us is to create brand awareness. We can't really we can't really say promise the results. But we did get a significant amount of reach for them, and there are people who are interested in their products. Yeah, and I feel
does Sony use you as a product launch? Was it a new product? I think the questioner was asking whether it's a new product, and they saw you as helping them launch a new product into a new area because of your reach, your influence.
In general, we don't really launch the product. Yeah, we don't really. They usually launch it and then they ask us to talk about it and create brand awareness. Yeah.
There's another question over here. Yes, Sophie.
So do you get hashtag, or say when you buy online, you do tip with me, or you mention your YouTube name, they get a discount. That way they can track you. Do you do that?
In general, some brands, yes, but that's usually for the smaller brands. Usually when we work with bigger brands like Sony, Guardian and all that, they don't do this. Yeah, it depends on the branding. And generally right now we are working with bigger brands, so they don't really have that. But they do have like hashtags and all that. They definitely, you can, I'm not sure if they can track that or not, but they do ask us to put hashtags. Yeah, we're not very sure of the results.
I mean, it's an interesting question. We're talking about sales conversion here, aren't we? And I have to deal with procurement teams in some of the biggest FMCGs in the world. And attribution is the lovely word that they use. Is I'm going to spend X and I want to know how many units off the supermarket shelf Y, have been sold to justify the expenditure with you guys. Well, there's no clear-cut, really solid way of tracking. It's getting better and better. The holy grail, as we call it, of being able to, and we're dealing now with GDPR and the issue of privacy. We were getting really close to being able to kind of like follow who'd been impacted by a particular message and then how that meant in terms of what they sold. I've certainly got case studies where we've been involved with campaigns for major brands where they sold out of a particular product during that launch period. Is it entirely down to the influencer content marketing part of that campaign? Probably not, but it played a very important part in raising awareness and driving sales.
I think what Sophie's saying is that can you track it directly? So have you worked with an influencer where they've actually tracked a code and it sold like 1 million products?
It is, but remember, we're also working around ring-fenced kind of large tech giants and what you can do and what you can trace on YouTube, for example, and also in Instagram. There are certain limits. It's getting better. We're getting to the point where we can absolutely say, okay, these number of influencers help shift X number of units off a shelf. But we're not quite there yet.
Next question.
Hi. So my question is, when you talk about influencer marketing, so which, like in your experience and in your experience as well, I mean, it's just a follow-up to her question. Do brands generally spend more on influencer marketing where they're more interested in the upper part of the funnel, they're targeting more awareness, and or do they spend more where they're talking about consideration or an intent to purchase? Which part of the funnel would influencer marketing be more dominant in?
So I very strongly feel that it's more on the upper funnel for the influencer marketing. So I'm still not very sure or clear whether we can track the sales from what we post. So I think, like I mentioned in the beginning, that one of the challenges or the barriers of influencer marketing kicking off is that how do we justify based on the ROI? Like if you're spending like $10,000 like somebody mentioned, what is the returns that we are getting? Even if the returns is like 1+, the marketers out there are looking for opportunities to scale. They're looking for growth. But unfortunately, I think other than reach and awareness, it has been very, very difficult to understand, if there is a real impact. Like for example, if bigger brands, they do brand study sort of a thing, so that kind of gives them some sort of an idea of where the brand is. Like, is it like the needle has moved or where we are? But other than that, I feel that is still a challenge. It's very upper funnel.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, what we're all looking for, I can hear in this room, and I sense it all the time when I talk to clients, is a standardized benchmark. But bear in mind that there's been an explosion in the interest and the use of influencers and creators in branded content campaigns. But arguably, we've not yet come up with standardized measurements in the way that we're seeing in other forms of digital marketing. I think there's a truth in that. Should we? Yes. And should we put a lot of effort into that? Absolutely, because I think that's one very important way of professionalizing this entire business. And it is a business. These creators are going to help brands connect with audiences that they can't reach otherwise, and of course they're looking for not just brand awareness but also sales conversion. So how you track that, and now how you convince very large companies with very big and powerful procurement companies that you should continue as an agency or as a creator to be relevant to their communication planning is what it is all about.
When it comes to attribution, assuming that Sony is working on a CPL basis, right, with Tiff and me and the whole roster of influencers, how then do you track which influencers were responsible for the eventual last click, last mile sale?
Okay, I think in general the brands that they are able to track the views and the reach and the engagement rate. But other than that, I don't think they are able to find out exactly like which influencer, you know, like you said. Yeah, so I think, yeah.
Perfect formula where you can do that. If we're really honest here, you know, and I'm not going to try and do. I mean, it's all about now trying to authenticate audiences, dealing with, you know, fraudulent reporting, very real concerns about this particular space and this particular area of the space in which we're all working in or part of. But that's great that we're asking these questions, and we will get there. You know, creators do need to be more upfront and honest about disclosing information if they are not working for an agency, if they are working for themselves. I've been in markets across Asia Pacific where clients relatively recently have still been spending money on influencer campaigns and do not know what they're getting back in return. It astounds me that that is happening. For me, it's music to our ears, because as a specialist agency in this space, we can help. I'm not saying we have all the answers, because technology is still huge innovation, still progress, but we're still some way of having exactly the kind of accuracy that you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm new to Singapore, so I would like to know about the regulations. Do you have to show it's a commercial partnership or not?
Oh, okay. In general, we are very upfront with our audiences. We do mention that it is a sponsored video, and yeah, we will mention that it is a sponsored video in our videos.
And I have another question regarding the micro-influencers. I don't know if it's an increasing trend here or not really. And for Singapore market, what's the number of followers for micro-influencers, and then you say it's...
Again, it really depends. I mean, a micro-influencer can be someone, as far as I'm concerned, it could be someone with a couple of thousand on Instagram. We have some real challenges in this part of the world, you know, for someone who's new, just that, you know, YouTube in a number of our markets is not the prevalent social media channel. It's Instagram. In some particular categories like luxury or fashion, it's definitely Instagram over YouTube. But in music or comedy, it's more YouTube. So depending on your category and your product and your service, that will play a part in determining who you work with.
Have you ever seen performance targets written into your contracts? And particularly to the girls, how would you feel about that? And do you think that might actually be the future? Like sales targets.
In your contract, do you have something that says you must hit this many viewers, this much engagement, this many likes, this many shares, this many comments within the contract?
No. Okay. How would you feel if a brand, you know, if say we're talking like, because this is in the last 5 years. I know it's been around 10 or 15 years, but it's really taken off, you know, on kind of full force in the last 5 years. But say next 2 or 3 years, as, you know, we talk about professionalization and, you know, brands want to connect, you know, their marketing spend and how much effort and energy they're putting into what they see in terms of dollar value. How would you feel if brands started to approach you and ask you, you know, we want you to connect, we want to see so many hits per post, or how would you feel about that? And you, like, in terms of what you do, because you're not doing it as a living, you're doing it as a kind of, it's a bit more of a vacation, right? You're doing this because you want to. Yeah. But it's not a job that you kind of, it's not like going for a job, it's a different mindset. So how would you feel about that?
You mean if brands would want us to hit like a certain target, right?
Yeah.
How do I guess it depends on what the target is. If we see that the numbers are definitely numbers we can hit, we will feel that it's fine, perfectly fine. But most of the time, brands don't give us numbers, like tell us that we have to hit this amount, this amount. They can see it for themselves, like our usual engagement is how much. So that's why they would want to approach us to promote for them. Yeah.
I want to go back to the B2B application. Traditionally, my understanding is that B2B applications require specialist media, and then those specialist media, such as magazines, etc., would have their own journalists. So those are the kind of first generation influencer, if I can put it that way. So in terms of your experience of the various vendors' campaigns, how are the profiles of the new generation of influencers differ from the trade journalists, for example, and the mode of communication, is that different as well from, say, typically text-based, being written pieces?
Yeah, that's a very good question. In B2B space, like, unlike other marketers, we are still investing in sort of like, telecalling and like personal touch, where people are actually, reaching to the partners and the sales guys and speaking to them, like, giving them product demos and stuff like that. We are like the offline media, like print is completely like, we don't use print at all. Like other than, so all the emailers and everything has moved to digital. And like the digital footprints is what we feel that like all our partners, everyone has moved to digital is what we see in all the markets. Like I manage APAC, in all the markets, including India, where we used to like, the change was very staggered, like people were still not ready to move and they were giving flyers and all of that. Now everyone has moved to digital. So what we do digital marketing. We try and collect the leads, follow up on the leads through the sales guys, either calling them or having a personal meeting for big sales and stuff.
Sorry, if I can just clarify. What I'm trying to ask is, say, the use of influencers. Are they, what kind of profile are we talking about? Because like we've got on stage mainly what I would call the lifestyle influencers. Yeah. So are we talking about the use of that kind of influencer, or are we back to the technical experts?
Yeah, we definitely deal with the technical experts. Like, there are like, for example, for Autodesk, there have been people who have dedicated their lives on just doing AutoCAD software. So they are the technical experts, and we identify them because we have like an Autodesk community forum, and that is like one of the most visited platforms. So we can clearly identify that these are the people who are actually like, giving answers to all the problems, troubleshooting, and then we will reach out to them, and then they have like huge following on their social platforms, and that's how we find that, okay, these are the people who are probably relevant to us.
Well, we can ask Olivia, what about LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn obviously has, was it 500 influencers? You got to give me a LinkedIn question, come on. LinkedIn, in terms of influencers, what is LinkedIn's strategy with regards to influence? Because it is ultimately the ultimate B2B platform.
Yeah, that's a really good question. We have several approaches. We have our power profiles, which are really talking about our influencers. They're kind of hand-picked based on their follower base and their networks and also the content that they're producing. So we have this that is mostly market-based as well. I think that there are two kind of influencers, there's one kind of influencer, but there are two different ways to demonstrate thought leadership and authority within a space. You can either be a thought leader as a brand or a thought leader as an individual. And that's really talking about expertise. And I think that's tying into your question as well. Really driving down into like what kind of technical expertise can you lean on. I think there's also a third component, which is actually your employees. Which can be influencers as well. And that's something that within the B2B space and within the professional networking platform that LinkedIn is, we need to definitely leverage a lot more. So yes, we do have external influencers on our platform. We do have power profiles, but also the behavior of LinkedIn as a platform is to leverage your internal employees as influencers for your brand or thought leadership as well.
Have you heard of of an agency, for example, who do what MediaCore do for Tip With Me, for example, who only represents, say, B2B influencers, and that would include LinkedIn, for example, i.e. they get paid to produce and publicize a product?
That's a great question. I'm not too sure about that.
Sounds like a niche in the marketplace.
Oh, yeah, a gap in the market. There you go.
Next question, yes.
My question is that if there are any examples of, let's say, one brand supporting one influencer for longer, like we see in sports, that there is a brand that's supporting one sportsman.
Some of our bigger campaigns that we have, or bigger relationships with groups like L'Oreal in Indonesia, we have a beauty squad. We have minimum 20 influencers who have been selected based on a number of criteria, passion points, the type of individual personality they are, and then the fit with what the brand's own personality and proposition is. And the reason that we advocate a plan like that, and the client is really passionate about this, is that you can really build a very deep relationship with these influencers, that you can integrate them into a number of events throughout the year. You can bring them into the research and development of the business. You can have brand love sessions where you get together with the team, the brand team and the influencers, so that they can really understand what the product and the service is. So they can speak about it with more passion, more authenticity. Means that the quality of their creative and their storytelling almost certainly will be enhanced. Rather than, what I earlier touched on was too many brands. And it's not straightforward, and it takes money and it takes time and effort to do this. Not every brand can do it, but you get the strongest results when you really develop a deeper, longer-term relationship with an influencer. And the influencer loves the product, loves the brand in a really meaningful way. I know it sounds a bit cringy, but you know what? All of us in this room have certain affinity with certain brands, and all of us in this room won't wear a certain type of jeans or won't drink a certain beer, I think. Yeah. I'm not sure on that one. Maybe that's the wrong kind of example. But preferences, right? We've all got preferences. And digital marketing is just word of mouth. It's just word of mouth. You tell me about a certain restaurant that's opened in Singapore somewhere and you really like it, I'll go there. Almost certainly. I'll probably really consider it. I don't really know you, sir. But, rather than the old way, which was an SMS pops up and intrusively, interrupts your life, and forget it. So digital influencers are just passing on that whole word of mouth and at scale and measurable.
I was just wondering how I'd explain that to my wife. I'm going to a brand love session today.
There's ways of doing it, I tell you.
We've got a question over here from Gary.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay, thank you. So my question is not for the panelists. My question is for the industry practitioners, right? So we're all marketers. We're all about metrics, right? So the lady here in front of me has had it right when she asked a question a while ago that, if you're talking to influencers, why don't we ask, for specific targets? Because we're investing X amount of money. So is the fault with the influencers who accept our money with no responsibility as to the outcomes except to raise awareness, or is it on us? Are we just being lazy? Or, this is the digital economy. why can't we not find a way to have metrics and professionalize this function, which is influencer marketing? We have one for content marketing, we have for partner marketing, and all the other sections of marketing, right? So, yeah, so my question is for the industry practitioners. Is this on us?
Can I just add, we in our contracts, we do have KPIs, and they are absolutely about influence. I cannot promise X number of views, but what we do build into KPIs, and we won't have contracts otherwise with big FMCGs, absolutely won't, is that based on, say, the last 3 months, a certain trend was that this certain creator has these benchmarks, whether it's engagement, whether it's views, whether it's impressions, and that's what we'll base into a promise. And if we don't deliver, we have to make good.
Right, but usually for marketers, it's not just engagement or impressions. What we're looking for is ROI, right? So it's like if you have promo code, if an influencer says, hello viewers, right, if you're interested in this product I'm talking about, use my X123 code when you check it out and buy something. So from our end, when we see it, right, whatever sales comes out from that influencer, we can trace it from all the way from the start to the end.
That would definitely be part of the campaign that we would promise. I mean, if that is a mandate, if that's part of the brief, and that's part of the deliverables.
Correct. So my ask is to the industry, why are not more marketers doing it?
Well, you should
I think we're letting people off too easily by just saying, I'm parking X amount of money just to raise awareness.
You can,
I think we should be fiscally responsible for our company's money.
But you can and you should. And a reputable agency will have to deliver on that.
One part is like brand marketing, that you just like spend money and half of it works, but you don't know which half works. And the other part is like direct marketing, and it's all about metrics. So I believe that maybe influencers, we are the stage that is like brand marketing, and maybe we are just exploring the direct marketing stage, which is all about the metrics and the promo codes and everything like that. So.
Just in the interim, I think one for Gary and then one for Veli, but on the issue of the industry, that's where industry associations come in. That's where bodies like ACMA come in. I know the IAB, for instance, has been around a long time, and they're built on digital standards.
Maybe I can give a little insight to that question as well, as I direct influencers and things like that. I don't think it's up to the influencer to be able to judge how they are effective with your company. You're choosing an influencer based on that they are selling a certain product, which is themselves. And a lot of the times influencers' products are based on their beliefs, their mission, what they want to achieve within their program. And if you're the client who wants to choose an influencer, you're like shopping for the right product. If you just buy a product just because it's worth a lot of money, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get the returns you want. If you select an influencer that has, say, 1,000 subscribers, but those 1,000 subscribers are diehards, you'll get 1,000 people buying your product, right? So. Yeah. It's condescending objectives from client sides and so forth, which kind of leads to my next question, which I want to ask the panel. What kind of metrics do you think the clients pin you up against, right, to see if whether or not their investment in your time or your video or your content is valuable for them to invest in? And maybe since you're the client, we'll start with this side so that you can tell me, what do you think do they pin you up against, and what would you actually wish they would consider instead of not?
Okay, in general, I think clients, they are more concerned with the views, yeah, and the reach. But for instance, okay, let's for example, Instagram. Okay, I have about 70,000 followers on Instagram, yeah, and then sometimes they would rather engage somebody with 200,000 followers, right? But actually, what really counts, what I feel, is the engagement. So let's say if they engage someone with 200K followers, that person doesn't really have the connection with their his or her followers. And whereas for me, my audiences are all very sticky, and they are, like you said, die-hard fans. Yeah, so they are more prone to buying the products that I recommend to them. So that's what I wish that more clients would, focus on, which is the engagement instead of just the numbers. Yeah, for instance, even someone smaller than me, maybe she has a more, she engages with the audience more. Yeah, it's really about engagement, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, I think I echo what a number of people have said about, distinguishing what part of the funnel an influencer actually has an impact on, and the idea that you can attribute an influencer down to kind of a dollar amount and you can tie the two together. I mean, it would be great, but I can't. It's very hard to kind of imagine that ever happening. So that's the first point. But the second point is kind of more practical. And I'd love to hear, sorry I don't remember your name, but the lady from LinkedIn who talked about taking your employees and turning them into influencers. And would just love to hear more about, what do? You just take them for a haircut first? Or, I mean, how does it all begin?
Preferably manicures, that would be great. Okay, so we actually have a product called Elevate, and that's a content sharing platform or interface where you can curate content and have your employees share that content out really easily. So ultimately, what the purpose of kind of activating your employees over at LinkedIn is all about doubling your reach. I mean, you're basically getting access to their networks, and that's such a powerful form of influencer marketing. And also what's really interesting, specifically from a LinkedIn context, is that CEO voices are way down. So we don't necessarily want to hear from, the top dogs and putting all of our eggs in one basket in very, very senior leadership in order to influence a brand or a product. We actually want to hear about, or we want to hear from people who are a little bit more our level or like-minded. So I want to hear about, another content marketing evangelist from another company and seeing what they're saying, for example. So there is a way that we can actually activate through our app Elevate, which is really just a very simple interface, and getting your employees on board on the program is very measurable. But then also just activating certain groups within your organization that are actively on our platform, for example, and you can turn them into superstars, incentivize them to start either creating content or sharing content out from your brand. That's also a very organic way to start. And I don't know if there's anything, Chris, that you want to add on to that as well.
I actually slightly disagree with you. I actually think that there needs to be more leaders on LinkedIn, because I don't think there are enough leaders, because I think a lot of staff won't go on unless the leaders are on LinkedIn. That's a fundamental. Every single one of our clients tends to be a CEO or a founder across the whole world, and we find that, I'll give you an example. I flew to Zurich to do Zurich Insurance, a fantastic masterclass with 100 marketeers from across the world, and they said the fundamental problem was the CEO of Zurich Insurance was not on LinkedIn, and therefore nobody else wanted to share anything on LinkedIn until he did it.
Yeah.
Because they wanted to follow him.
That is true. It definitely takes solid leadership backing to promote an adoption of a platform. That's something I agree with. But what happens when that CEO leaves? How do you future-proof your program? So that's how you just make sure that you build this culture within your organization to share and advocate content. I mean, LinkedIn employees, we probably drink the Kool-Aid best. And so we're always encouraged to share content that we feel is relevant and kind of drive our own little mini content strategies. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, CEOs are important, but do we really want to listen to Richard Branson all the time? Is that always relevant to us, right, and our industry, especially when we're looking at industry experts? So there is definitely multiple facets to this diamond, but I mean, the recent Edelman Trust report also just said that we want to hear about more people from ourselves because we trust them more. It feels a little bit more authentic from a brand. And I think that also touches with you ladies as well in terms of your audience feel like friends. People relate to you. We need that sense of authenticity, and that's the real essence of influencer marketing. Oh, again? I think I need to sit down.
I've certainly noticed in the last few weeks, in fact, that we're seeing far more sponsored content on LinkedIn, particularly from the World Economic Forum, and I'd say compared to about a year ago, it was far more kind of like individual driven. But how do you manage this issue about kind of trust and authenticity with the reality of advertising?
That's a really, really big question. How do you deal with trust and authenticity in this era of marketing? Well, I think it's also based on the integrity of the platform. There are quite a few platforms out there that are in a little bit of hot water, to say the least. And also we're clearly seeing the agendas that are being driven specifically from Facebook itself in terms of what they wanted to drive. I think it was crime and tragedy and a third one that I can't remember. So I think it's all coming down to the platform and how much you can trust that platform in terms of delivering the quality content. A little bit of like LinkedIn 101 is that we have human curators curating our content all the time, and we have very, very strict policies when it comes to our advertising units and also frequency caps as well. So we're very kind of audience-centric with our experience, and hopefully that just stays put, and we'll just see what happens to other platforms.
Miguel.
Okay, so not necessarily directly related to the subject of the influencers, but more content marketing in general. So the best, for me anyway, the best influencers are the ones that I like to follow, specifically on YouTube, are actually representing their own brands, right? So these are guys who run their own online stores. They're usually small companies that behave more like media companies because they're creating tons of content, but they're also online stores in themselves. So 2 questions. One is, for the ladies, have you ever thought about that, like creating your own brand and actually selling your own stuff because of the size of your audience?
Yeah. When's it coming out? So when can we buy it?
And the second is, for you guys, I mean, for the people who work with other brands, right? I mean, are you seeing a trend where you have more brands starting to behave like publishers themselves? Right, because there are tons of opportunities, and there are brands who are starting to do this really, really well, and a lot of brands who, in my opinion, just don't get the opportunity. That there's a really huge possibility of, creating content and being a publisher or behaving like a media company as a brand. And I'm really curious to see whether there's more people, more brands doing that kind of thing.
Let's ask Tiff with me first. When's your new product range going out?
Okay, currently we do have plans for that in the long term, but right now not really, because we are focused on growing our channel and reaching more audiences. And to be honest, we are working with a lot of brands right now, so we are really tied down. So I feel...
You're not going to be Singapore's Kim Kardashian, then?
Sorry.
You're not going to be...
Hopefully, maybe in future. Yeah. But just not now, because we are still quite new and we are still in a growing stage.
It's a good point. Do you think there's a level where you have to get to, obviously not Kardashian's level, but do you think it has to be 1 million, 500,000 followers to be able to launch your own products, to have enough people to actually then buy it, to justify turning away brands who could substitute that with real money?
Okay, for us, the goal is probably 1 million at least, hopefully. Yeah, we do hope to reach a certain level, probably 1 million, yeah.
Philip?
I mean, I think it's a great question about brands becoming publishers of content. I mean, there's a couple of great examples, and the Red Bull and the GoPro, for example, stick in my mind. But in terms of experience here in Asia, from a number of different categories, Marriott hotels, for example, ride-sharing companies like Gojek. We're seeing some Canon imaging. You know, in a number of respects, reaching out to passionate followers, passionate photographers in the case of Canon, who are really keen to share some of their expertise and some of their experience, some of their learnings, and curating that, I think, offers some really exciting opportunities. I think Canon's done an amazing job of that. I think, you know, Gojek, for example, we were involved in a campaign which was celebrating the 7th anniversary last year, and it was working with micro-influencers, and it uncovered an incredible number of really, really creative, passionate Gojek users, and Gojek were able then to curate that content. They found some amazing videographers, some amazing animators. They were then able to work with them on other projects, with Ritz-Carlton Hotels. Similarly, we worked on a campaign where Trey Fei from US, a photographer, was out in Japan, interacted, engaged with Japanese photographers, and it created a series of content pieces that the hotel was then able to curate and use for a certain period of time for their own purposes of communication, and basically use it on their own online sites. One of the challenges I would say is, and we work with some quite big brands in this area, is that their own brand channels don't always have the kind of volume of traffic. And where we've had some interesting results is where we've worked with creators who we've created content, collaborated with the creators to create content for their own native channel on YouTube or Instagram, and then use that content to promote and to raise awareness of the creator, the same influencer, on the brand's own premium channel. So if you like, you get to see a certain series of content, certain episodes of a content, if you like, how-to tutorials, and then you get to see more of it on the brand's own channel, and the strategy being that you hope to raise, or you aim to raise, awareness of the brand's own channel, and drive more traffic to it, and obviously maintain that. But as you know only too well, you've got to feed the content machine. You can't just have a certain amount of content for a certain period of time and then just not do anything. So there's got to be a long-term commitment involved in all of this. And if you've got someone at the top
I see very often what happens is that a lot of brands attempt to do this kind of creating their own media channel, and just fail miserably because it's too hard sell, or they're just not getting the balance of the right kind of content correctly, or whatever it is, right?
So what we are seeing in B2B space right now is that a lot of the brands have started understanding that there is a need for the content hub. So very recently, Intel had its own content hub. Like, they were really generating a lot of content, and it was not only just about the brand itself, but it was also about what they were supporting, like what are the causes. Like, for example, for Autodesk, very recently we have also set up our own content hub, where we are talking a lot about what's new and what's happening in architecture space, or what's new and happening in construction space, because that's where our product support and enhances. So we are trying to make that connection for the industry. So a lot of content that is being produced. The only challenge that I feel about it has just started, but and hopefully probably all the content that is being generated is globally, is the same content that gets cascaded across all the markets. And in APAC right now we have there is a need for a very, very personalization for some of the markets, which is not happening. So hopefully the next phase would be that we will have more of a Japanese, Korean sort of a content coming up, rather than just the global content cascaded.
I was just wondering how you go about stopping the client or the brand from, I guess, squashing the influencer underfoot, from putting so many unseemly demands on the influencer that the content starts to suffer and the audience starts to go away. Because I know that there are plenty of YouTube channels that I've watched where I love it for ages, and then it somehow gets tainted by commerce, and all of a sudden it's awful, and I go away. So how do you stop that from happening?
You had an experience of that, and I sort of got enough.
I think we are very lucky because we haven't like had any encounters with brands like that. But in general, I feel if the brand is demanding too much and making it too commercialized, we would definitely tell them, communicate with them, and tell them that by making the whole video like a commercial, our audiences are not gonna be receptive. It's gonna be like, it's gonna go in the other direction. It's gonna make it worse. So I feel like communication is really important as well. If we feel like it's too much, we may also reject them and say like, I don't think we can do this. Be honest, yeah, and upfront.
I've never had any really tricky situation. Other than one particular time we were on a shoot and it was premium content that we were creating with a big brand, and the brand manager was there and wanted to try and get a certain, above and beyond what had been discussed and agreed upon, more product placement, if you like. And the creator quite rightly said that's not going to work, and respectfully stood her ground, and the client respected that. Now, I'm not saying this is all about personalities, and there's some nightmares you have to encounter in life, right, in every capacity, in every form. I've not encountered it in the way that it went really south, it went really sour. I've heard of stories of that. I would try, and my advice would be, is try to sift out the type of client who is likely to be that kind of micromanager, and that type of person who's more secure and more comfortable with a traditional ambassador type role, where here's the script, read the lines, and that's it. Because if you aren't prepared to let go, if you aren't prepared to let the creators speak with their own tone and their own voice, which is why they're relatable and which is why they have that following, then it's counterproductive. Like for the example that you just said, you're not going to achieve the results because your audience is going to say that's so deliberately a hard sell, which we know millennials and Gen Zs really resist.
Last couple of questions. You got a question there?
Yeah, in fact, I'm working in communications and not in marketing, so I'm curious about the conversational side. So how do you manage conversation with your followers regarding those products, about the products you kind of promote, and on the agency side as well? Do you leave it to influencers, or how do you manage? Maybe you had some difficult situations, interesting situations.
Yes.
Because not many people came through your DMs to ask you to actually be a brand owner. So how do you deal with the engagement, is the question, from your followers?
Okay, for instance, previously we had one case in which we promoted an application, and we constantly got so many DMs every day, messages every day regarding this app. So in general, we just posted a content saying that, if you have any questions, please go and ask them directly. We direct the traffic directly to the client so that they can answer the questions, because that would be too overwhelming for us. Yeah, so that's what we do.
Okay, so we kind of discussed a lot of challenges that clients face in terms of working with influencers. But I wanted to understand, what are certain challenges that you faced over the journey of even when you were, let's say, micro-influencer with around 20,000 subscribers to when you became 100,000 subscribers to 200,000. As this journey and as the subscribers grow, I'm assuming the challenges are different. And what are the kind of challenges that you faced along the journey from your perspective as being a creator of content?
I guess initially, I think passion is really important in the beginning, because in the beginning, I'm just not going to get any clients. You're just going to do this for your passion. So I feel if anyone wants to get into this industry, I feel like you do need to remember that you're not going to get much support financially in the beginning. Yeah, and then to be honest, our road to in this industry has been quite smooth. We are very lucky and very blessed. So we don't really face much challenges. Perhaps some clients, they try to undercut you, but in general we do not accept those jobs. Yeah.
Okay, I think we're probably up to time, so I'd just like to thank everyone, thank the panel, so maybe everyone put their hands together. And we try and make this event as much about the audience, and so thank you very much for being a great audience, asking great questions today. Thank you very much. And please think about ACMA and join the conversation, be part of the industry. You can sign up online at asiacontentmarketing.net. Thank you very much, Chris and Olivia and Rio. And that was a great little session on LinkedIn. I like it. And that's it. We'll still be serving drinks for a little while. So come up, ask questions of the panelists individually if you want. And thank you once again, and good night.